Hello, my name's Andy. Welcome to episode 80 of Keeping Water. Now, I'd like to start by talking about the channel a little bit because I've had a quite a significant increase in subscribers over the last few weeks. I think it's about 48 in 28 days, which for me is pretty significant. I know for some people that's a bad week, but for me, that's really, really good. So thank you very much if you have subscribed. I really do appreciate it. And if you're one of those people who's recommended the channel, Vince from Twisted Koi, thank you very much. I'm really grateful for that as well. And if you do know anybody who might be interested in my channel, please share my channel, because I know it's a little niche. You know, my type of pond and inhabitants aren't the most popular. But if you know of anybody who might be interested, if you could share the channel, as I said, that would be really, really helpful, and I would appreciate it. Now, I'd also like to thank any of you who tuned in on Thursday for the video I made about Time to Talk Day. I know it's obviously not remotely connected to pond keeping, but for the number of people who did watch, I really, really appreciate that, and appreciate all the likes and the comments as well. As I said, as I said in the video, I think it's quite an important subject to not just keep in a box and actually talk about in different types of arenas. So if you did tune in and watch that, thank you very much. Now, today's video, I'm going to start by talking about winter. You know, that season that we're meant to be in at the moment, which is, well, we've had a pretty mild winter, I think it's fair to say. The snow and sub-zero temperatures have been fairly brief and actually not that bad, which is great on one level because, you know, there's lots of risks around freezing temperatures and ponds, but it's been difficult for the fish to have a consistent temperature because it's fluctuated so much. And that's kind of where we are at the moment, because temperatures have risen over the last 2 or 3 weeks from what was about 3 degrees when I was talking about getting in the pond to now, I think it was 7.6 degrees last time I took it, which is pretty high for this time of year. And I think the fish are kind of thinking it's spring really, and the beginning of spring. So the carp especially have been a lot more active over the last week or so. Exploring the pond, as you can probably see behind me, exploring the pond a lot more, lots of different areas of the pond, and looking for food a lot of the time. Their appetite's really risen, I think it's fair to say, which obviously brings me onto that subject of when you feed and when you don't feed. So at 7.5 degrees, it's still a pretty risky time of year, and in fact it could be the riskier time of year because we're in that temperature range where bacteria and pathogens are starting to get active, but your fish's immune system and your biological filtration isn't at its best. So you do need to be careful around feeding too much and risking problems with water quality and the fish obviously producing more waste and your filters not being able to cope with that. But that's not to say that I haven't been feeding my fish, but I've only been feeding them a little bit. So I've been giving them very small amounts of sinking wheat germ, and not every day, I think about twice a week really. And they really seem to appreciate that and hoovered most of the pellets up. Now, I'm not concerned really so much about feeding the fish because of issues with them digesting the food, which I know some people have concerns about. I think as long as you don't feed too much and you're aware of when really cold spells are coming up, then that's not really the issue. I think for me, the issue is really about the waste they produce and how well your filters are going to be able to cope with it. So I am cautious on that regard. Now, in terms of my filters, I've been increasing how much I've been cleaning them as the water temperatures have gone up and as I've been feeding the fish a little bit. So the Tempest I've been cleaning about twice a week, and the main filter I clean about once every 8 to 10 days. It really depends on where my work lands really, because I do 12-hour shifts and I don't really want to clean the filters around on work days. So depending on when I'm working, it's around sort of 8 to 10 days I've been cleaning the filters. And obviously I've been doing some water changes when I clean the filters, and I've been adding some top-ups when I've been cleaning the Tempest, because obviously I lose a bit of water every time I clean the Tempest. And really, I think that's quite an important thing to do in terms of water changes at this time of year, because your filters biological function isn't going to be at its best. So you can help reduce some of the ammonia and nitrate by doing water changes as well. And my water tests have been fine, so I'm obviously okay in terms of how much I'm feeding and how much I'm cleaning. But I will talk a little bit more about water tests later on in the video, because I'm interested in what tests I'm using, and I've seen some really good videos. Lau from the French Connection did a really good video on her water test kits, and I really am trying to think about which ones I'm going to use in the future, because I want to test more regularly. But obviously they cost money, but more of that later on in the video. So yeah, so I've been cleaning the filters a bit more and doing water changes. Now, obviously part of getting your filters ready to cope with an increased biological load means you've got to let them process, as it were, the ammonia and then subsequently the nitrate, because that's how they build up colonies of bacteria that eat away at that stuff. But I think at this time of year, especially thinking that we're probably going to have more of a cold spell coming up, I don't think we're done with winter yet. I think the best thing to do is to do a few more water changes, because actually that will help the filters deal with the ammonia the fish are going to be producing. When we get into spring properly, then I'm happier with letting the filters deal with that and build up their colonies of bacteria. But I think at this time of year, when we're going to hit another cold spell and those colonies are going to be depleted a bit, I think it's better to try and manage some of that with water changes rather than letting the filters get on with it by themselves. So yeah, I think the fish definitely think it is spring, or at least the beginnings of spring. And as I said, the carp especially have been really active and just eating away at algae on the bottom of the pond, which brings me to another interesting point around feeding and this time of year, really. Now, some other ponds may be different, but in my pond, it's pretty impossible to keep my fish being nil by mouth, as it were. There's a lot of algae they can eat. There's plant matter they can eat. I'm not sure when some of the smaller crustacean and insect life start to appear in the pond, or whether they're there all year round, but they can obviously eat that as well. So I can never really stop my fish eating anything and keep them completely nil by mouth, and therefore producing little or no waste, because there's always the algae, if nothing else. And certainly the carp have been investigating the algae. Whether they've been eating all of it, I'm not sure. But they're definitely, as anglers will often say, they're on the munch at the moment. And as I said, the mirror carp even came up to the surface to eat a leaf, which it didn't spit out. Very rare. So they're pretty desperate for food, but I've still been, by and large, sitting on my hands a bit and only feeding them small amounts. As I said last week, I think it was last week, maybe the week before, the carp are looking quite skinny for them at the moment. So I've been wanting to feed them a little bit, but I've been trying to do it safely. Now, I would also say it's not just the carp who have livened up. The tench has definitely poked its head out of the floor of the pond and shown itself. And whether it's just because it's like to follow the carp around because it likes to hang around the carp, or whether it's actively looking for food, I'm not sure. Talking about the crucian carp that we eventually found again last week, if you watched last week's video, not been able to see it at all. It's gone back to hiding wherever it hides. I'm guessing in folds in the liner. But yeah, not been able to find that again since, which I kind of expected. But we'll see as its appetite increases. Maybe we'll see more of it as it comes out to eat. And I have plans for introducing some smaller sinking pellets that will maybe entice it out a bit more and won't be so tempting to the carp when I'm feeding them some larger and tastier sinking pellets. So maybe I'll be able to entice that crucian carp out and see more of it as it starts to get a little bit more hungry. Now, I do want to talk about the rudd fry a little bit as well. So I did some videoing, as you'll be able to see behind me, just having a look at seeing how they're getting on and filming them a little bit closer up. And one of the things I spotted about them is their coloration. So if you think about the adult rudd that I've got, and I've got 13 of them, around 4 or 5 of them, I always lose count, are actually silver and not golden, which I actually prefer, because although rudd in the wild, as they get bigger and get deeper and get very, very mature, will get a golden hint to them. They're by and large silver fish. And obviously I wanted a natural native looking stock of fish in my pond, and getting golden rudd is a little bit goes against that a little bit. So I don't mind them being silver, but their parents actually were all golden. The original 5 rudd I had, which are the grandparents of the fry, were all golden. Now in their fry, the ones that survived anyway, 4 or 5 of them, so about a third of them, were silver. Now if I'm looking at the rudd fry, I think quite a lot of them are silver. I would say about half. It's really hard to tell because they're quite young, and certainly it seems some of the larger ones have a more of an orange colour, so it may be something they develop over time. But I would say at least half of this current stock of fry are actually silver rather than golden, which makes me think that actually that golden colour will start to disappear over subsequent spawnings, which again I'm not too bothered about. And I would guess that golden coloration is probably a recessive characteristic, so it probably would over time. So if I think sort of 10 or 15 years time, if I still got a pond and I still got rudd, that probably most of them, if not all of them, will be silver. And as I say, I don't mind. I quite like the silver coloration. So yeah, that's quite interesting. Obviously we'll see probably over the next year exactly how many of them are silver and how many of them keep that golden colour. But yeah, I'm quite pleased if some of them turn silver. I do prefer them, and it does look more natural to me. So as you can probably tell, because I'm not talking excitedly about them, the fish haven't arrived. So I have turned my thoughts to other plans. Now, one of the things I really want to improve around the pond is the fence, which is principally there to stop herons getting in the pond, but is also there to stop my cats getting at the fish, because they probably would, and generally to keep some of the less capable predators away from my fish. But it's got some problems. It's pretty ugly and it's pretty flimsy. Now, the ugliness isn't too much of a problem because by and large, I almost designed it. Well, I say designed it. As I do with many things, I bodged something together with what I had remaining in my garage, which is definitely a theme to how I do things. But it was kind of designed to sort of blend in with the marginal plants as they grow. And I would say it does by and large. In the summer when the plants are quite big, you can't see much of the fence. But there's lots of times a year, like now, where you can see a lot of the fence and it definitely looks ugly. Now, its fragility, again, isn't a problem because it stops things crawling or climbing on it. So a heron couldn't land on it and wouldn't feel safe landing on it. My cats have tried to climb up it, but without a lot of success. So that flimsiness is in it of itself a positive. But it's kind of too flimsy because it does have a second job, and that's to take the leaf netting during autumn, and also if we get really heavy snowfall, which fingers crossed we might not get this year, also to take the tarpaulin that I put over the pond. So it needs to be a little bit more robust and it needs to look a little bit better. So I've come up with a plan, and that is to get some round kind of wooden stakes that I will use as posts, and then to use some decking rope to link between the posts. And really that's kind of decorative, but also to kind of keep them in place. Although I will probably use some postcrete in some holes when I put the posts in. But then on the side closest to the plants and the pond, to put that fence netting up again. So that might be quite hard for everyone to picture, and I hope in videos when I actually get around to doing it, you'll be able to see it better. So it will still have that fence netting to stop animals getting through it, but it will have some more rigid posts and some rope in between the posts, which I think will look quite good. And I want to make a little bit of a better gate at the front, which obviously I need to open and close when I get in and out of the pond, or if I'm doing anything particularly important in the pond that I need to get quite close to the water to do. So that's my plan, if I've explained that particularly well, which I'm not sure I have, but that's what I'd like to do, and I think that would be a little bit better. It would look a little bit nicer during these months specifically, and would be a little bit more rigid without necessarily being something that birds like herons would actually want to land on, or my cats would like to climb on. So that's a plan with the fence netting, and I hope to get that done over the next couple of weeks, depending on how much all those bits I need to buy cost really, but we'll see. Now, other plans for the pond really involve around not doing too much to the equipment and more around things like feeding, as I've said quite a lot. Now, obviously, as we've had this warmer weather and my thoughts have turned to feeding quite a bit, I'm starting to make those plans really. Now, obviously, as you come out of winter and into spring and then into summer, you do have to be quite cautious about how much you feed and build up slowly, as I've said, to let the filtration, the biological filtration, keep up with it. And now part of making sure you do that properly is testing your water as you go along. Now, obviously, as I'm increasing the feeding, I want to test more often, and that will mean at least weekly tests. Now, test kits aren't massively expensive, but testing quite often can make it quite expensive. And also, I'm really looking for the best test kit I can find. Now, as I said earlier, Lau from the French Connection did a review of a test kit she was sent, and I can't remember the name of it as I speak now, but go to her channel and you'll find out. But one of the things it had that I really liked is it had a way of comparing colours, which I think was pretty much genius really. So I would really like that test kit, but I had a look and it was 80 quid, which is a lot of money and not what I can really afford in one go, to be honest. So anybody who has any other ideas of really good test kits that they can recommend, certainly ones that aren't that expensive if you're testing regularly, I'd really love to hear. So, please comment section below and let me know. I'd be really grateful. Right, I think that's it for this week's episode. Again, I don't want to cross fingers because I think I'm probably jinxing it a bit, but I really hope I get word of when I'm getting my fish then. That would be really exciting, especially as this time of year now with slightly warmer temps in the pond, it's a slightly better time to be putting new fish in. So I really hope to get them soon. If not, I hope to get the fence done relatively soon, and that will be in future episodes. If you've liked this episode, sparse on detail though it is, please think about subscribing or liking or commenting. As I did on a previous episode when I was showing a lot of underwater footage in the background, I will release during the week a 4K version of all of the footage without me in the way and me waffling on. So that'll be more of a kind of relaxing video and a bit more closer up look at the fish underwater. So that will come out probably Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe Thursday, we'll see. And that, as I said, will be in 4K. Other than that, the next video will be next Monday. And as I said, might have fish, probably won't. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.